Hello and welcome to the Durham Talents Channel. My name is Jesse Durham. For today's episode, I'm going to be having a conversation with my friend Linus. He is an application specialist with the Money Multiplier. He's a licensed agent. He specifically helps people with infinite banking, but that's not where he started. And we get to hear his story today about what his journey looked like being exposed to the infinite banking concept and how he's applied it and what life looks like today. We had a great conversation and I hope that you enjoy. Awesome. So let's just jump into it, man. I would love, for me myself, I know lots of other people will benefit when they hear your story just because I'm aware of some of your knowledge base about infinite banking, right? But what I'd like to do as always is go back and just tell me who you were, what life looked like when you were just exposed to the idea of becoming your own banker. What were things looking like then?
Yeah, I'll go back a little further than that, actually. I
Okay,
know,
tell me, riding bike days as a kid. I don't know, throwing rocks, whatever.
yes, sir, yes, sir. So I know I spoke with the Do brothers about a year ago at an event they were speaking at here in Nashville, and they got a little bit of my backstory. So I was actually born into a horse and buggy Mennonite family, into that religion, very similar to Amish. So no technology, no vehicles, and some things like that. So my upbringing was very different. I had 8 grades of education, and that was it. And then real life hands-on experience is really where it went from there. So I left that religion be 7 years ago now when I was 20. Um, I really just left because I wanted a truck. I wanted a phone. I didn't want to have to hide it and all this drama.
All right, quick question. What kind of truck?
So it was just a rusty Chevrolet, man.
Okay, but all right, but
Yeah,
Chevy. Okay.
yeah, that's where it started. I'm not really a Chevy guy, no.
Okay, that's what I was
I have
asking.
a not really brand loyal. Yeah,
Just
yeah.
curious.
So within a year after I left, I was exposed to the true gospel message and actually got saved, accepted Jesus into my heart and changed my life. Um,
Hallelujah.
and oh yeah, oh yeah, it's just the biggest event ever. So another 2 year, yeah, another a year and a half or 2 years later, I got married. And so now that's been 5 years ago, next month. And so,
Congratulations. That
yeah,
5 years is a big marker. Okay. Lauren
yeah,
and I'll be married 17 years this year. And
nice.
I feel like that 5 year marker sticks out in my mind as well. So congratulations to y'all. How did y'all
Yeah.
meet?
So we actually met the very weekend I was leaving the religion. So there was so much going on in my head and whatnot. We met at my cousin's wedding all the way out in Colorado. For your information, I'm in Kentucky, and I was at that time as well. Um, so yeah, we actually met and both kind of asked each other some questions and whatnot, and we both came away thinking, never that person. And so
How
she
about
changed
that?
a little bit, and I changed a whole lot because obviously she met me before I became a good person, before I became a Christian.
Right.
So, yeah, a lot of things changed in a short period of time then.
New creature, right?
So, oh, yeah. So I came across a Facebook ad less than a year after we were married, for the book that Brent Kessler wrote, the man, Brent Kessler. So him and Chris Noggle wrote a book called Mapping Out the Millionaire Mystery, and they
Mhm.
were advertising it on Facebook. Hey, get the book for free, just pay the shipping. And I couldn't pass that up because they had some more into that ad, that was like, I have never heard of this before. I can't even remember. I think they were talking about being able to use your money at the same time, or two places at the same time, basically. I was like, this is not possible. But I was interested in finding out about it.
So you
Got the
said, oh,
book.
okay, free book, send it on.
Yeah, yeah. Now I got the book, and it probably sat around on some desk for months before I ever read it. I'm not much of a book reader anymore. Um, but I did read it and go from there. I got on the YouTubes and some webinars and different things. I spent a good 8, maybe 9 months of consuming content, trying to wrap my head around the whole different way of thinking and how money actually works, before I ever became remotely comfortable with thinking of starting my own policy. And I was in a bit of a gridlock with that at one point, a few months in, probably about the halfway point before I first got introduced and actually went ahead with my first policy. About the halfway point in between there, I was in Nevada specifically for some firearms training. So it was at a pretty high class firearms training place, and the Airbnb my friends and I were staying at was actually a part-time instructor at that firearms institute. So we connected on a lot of things just around that. But man, this guy was living in some big house. He had some high dollar cars, high dollar guns, all this stuff just kind of screamed success, from a money standpoint at least. And he had at least 3 houses in a row on that street. The others were also short-term rentals and whatnot. I'm thinking, yeah, this guy's made it at least to a point. And so I'm think I hear him one night talking to one of the guys about his background as I think he said a Southern Baptist a pastor, and I knew that typically pastors don't get paid very much,
Right.
and so I'm all ears, man. What took this guy from that to this? And so one night I basically posed him the question of, hey, what did your journey look like? What did you do? What made this success? What did you do? And I spent hours up until like midnight just listening to him kind of rambling on. He wasn't really staying on point with his conversation, but it's fine, I was listening. And then here comes this basically this, well, okay, so I was also asking, what do you think I should do at my point in life? And here comes this God moment out of his mouth. He's saying, well, at your age, one of the most powerful things you could do is start a whole life insurance policy on yourself that's built for cash value. And I couldn't believe my ears. I couldn't believe what he was saying because he
Yeah,
had no
nobody's ever heard
idea.
that other than them hearing you say it right now.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, he had not known I was researching this. He, this was just, yeah, this was totally
Yeah, outside
God.
of your research, that would just be a
Uh-huh.
what are you talking about statement or declaration.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And that was a bit of a breakthrough for me because that was one thing I was searching for a little bit. Who outside of the money multiplier that I was hearing from in their YouTubes, who else has used this? Who else really is going to be able to tell me this is what you should do or this is what I did? I wanted some verification outside of the people that might be just salespeople trying to scam me.
Yep. Yep. Did you ever
So
get
the,
that insight from this guy? Was he just speaking from a product standpoint, or was he aware of infinite banking, or do you know?
I actually never got a response from him when I've reached out since. Um, now, yeah, I'm not sure from a product standpoint where he was at. I know he was an insurance agent, as well with a
Okay.
company that I don't recognize necessarily as good for infinite banking.
But it
But that
still
may have
just
been
could have been from
separate.
a pure product standpoint, then, where he just says, hey, this is a good thing to have, especially at your age and for a high cash
It could have
value.
been,
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But I didn't know that many details about it. That was really just what I was looking for in a bit of an external confirmation.
Yeah, sure. Well, I'm
That
loving
was
it so far. Keep going with your story. So you're about halfway through your vetting process, and we've already started with Bibles, and now we're talking about guns. This is getting real fun. You're halfway through. You're at this gridlock moment, and you hear somebody else who has some things to show, financially speaking, say, "I think whole life's a great thing for you to have at your age." So, what did the second half then of the vetting process of infinite banking look like for you?
that was really the turning point. I came home and told my wife what happened, and I'm like, this tells me what I need to know. I'm going to do this. So then it was just at that time, I didn't have much extra cash flow. I don't even remember why. Um, I think my income was really, really low, and I had a little bit of debt. And I was trying to basically put all extra cash flow towards that debt. It wasn't necessarily bad debt, but it was a private loan from my dad, but that I used to buy my wee little mobile home on a little lot. And
Mm-hmm.
so I was living in my own house. So
Well, tell me
I'm
this. What did
still,
that conversation look like when you come home from a firearms training trip and you tell your wife that you found, some confirmation on this financial path that you're considering? How did that look?
it's amazing, it was an answer to the prayer she was praying. She wasn't praying for one answer or the one way or the other as far as answers go, but she was praying for direction and guidance, and that's the most awesome thing.
Absolutely. Awesome. All right. Fantastic. Okay. So then what did next steps look like for you?
It took a little bit of time, and I was still consuming content, um, like every night. I come home from work, and I might have spent the rest of the night on the YouTubes, um, in the kitchen on the easy chair. So my wife's hearing all this, and
Okay.
so that's what really was the big deal in changing my mindset, where I shifted and started paying more of just a minimum payment on that loan to my dad to be able to have a little more cash flow. And also, I did get several raises at work, and kind of changed that. My work changed to where I got a lot more income there. So let me see, that would have been February versus June. So about 4 months after I met this gentleman in Nevada is when I started my first policy, doing 1,000 a month. And so I'm thinking it was about 6 months later that I had the funds to be able to cash off the entire loan to my dad. And so that was an awesome feeling. That was the only debt I had at the time. And so yeah,
Well,
I couldn't
let
believe
me
what was
ask you a
happening.
couple of questions there. So the one question I'd like to ask you that I think's very helpful to people is how did you arrive at picking that first policy's premium amount? You know, what processes or what conversations did you have? What did that look like for you to arrive at knowing this is what I want to begin with?
Yeah, so I took a good look at my cash flows, what money was coming in every month, and what's going out in expenses every month, and what's left over.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I didn't do like an actual budget to be able to see and track that from month to month. I still don't do a budget, and that's maybe a mindset thing I should be looking at. But I kind of got a rough idea of what I think I can handle comfortably, and just went for it.
Okay, I got you. All right. So you were just looking at your cash flows in general. You picked, I'm using your words, a comfortable number in getting started. All right. So my second question, going back to something else that you said, Linus, is um, you caught on from the beginning to money being able to be used in multiple ways. That was one thing you said earlier in the conversation when you were first seeing that Facebook ad about infinite banking from the book and everything. So you see a way to use money multiple ways or multiple times. And it sounds like you connected the dots from that first seed being planted to saying, well, why would I pay extra to this loan that I have with my dad until I have a vehicle that I can multiply the uses of my money? Does that make sense how I'm saying that? You decided, okay, I'm actually going to pay my dad the minimum for right now because I want more cash flow freed up to go into the policy first. And then, of course, use that to pay that private loan off quicker. Am I hearing that right?
Yes, and so here's another interesting piece to that. This loan from my dad was at 0% interest.
Okay.
So I had a bit of a hurdle there. I did multiple strategy calls before I ever got convinced to do this, because I was like, man, if I'm not paying any interest to my creditor, why would I even do this through a life insurance, whole life contract where I'd be taking a policy loan that is accruing at interest for me to pay off this 0% loan. And the thing that, and I mean, and this took a while for me to wrap my head around, is that every dollar I'm paying back to my dad in this loan is dollars that are leaving my family forever. I'm not going to recapture those. And so changing the one thing and where my money goes first into this whole life contract where the funds are guaranteed to grow and compound and earn dividends for the rest of my life. It's like they're in there permanently, but I can use them at the same time, is really what the switch was, once I wrapped my head around that. And then also treating my money like I would a bank's money. If I was doing a bank loan, charge yourself interest, or pay yourself interest when you're borrowing your own money in that scenario. Once I understood why I would want to do that, it also made more sense. And so then my focus became to shove as much money as I can into my policy. And then once I've got enough to just cash off this loan to my dad, we did it.
Awesome. I love that. And I think a lot of folks that are in the pay with cash mindset, or that's just their approach in general, I love it, right? But of course, I think there are some folks that they work through those hurdles as well of, well, why would I use my policy? Like I had a client recently take the first policy loan just to do it, just to literally go through the motions, right? Gonna do this summer vacation. Okay, I'll use a policy loan. She still doesn't understand why, I don't think, all the way that you and I could. So I'd like to continue to speak to that. Why should somebody consider using a policy loan for something that they were going to do anyway, instead of just paying cash for it, or instead of using, even if they could get to that 0%, what are some reasons that pop out in your mind of why the policy? I mean, you mentioned some, right, already, that there's compounded, that there's still access, that there's dividends. Is there anything else that sticks out in your mind with that kind of scenario?
Well, at the end of the day, these specially designed and engineered whole life policy contracts are still life insurance. So there is a death benefit attached. And that's another thing that brought us, or really changed our financial picture for me and my wife. Well, by that time we had a baby, so there were three of
Awesome.
us. Is I was the sole breadwinner, and so if something were to happen to me, I were to pass away, I didn't really have much of anything to leave my wife at that point. Now, once there was this life insurance policy on me, there's a good sized death benefit that was going to pay out if I were to pass away. And so that was a big peace of mind. Now, the other piece of using someone else's money, which in this case would be the insurance company's money instead of your own, is opportunity cost. And I know you talk about that all the time. So if you were to just pay cash and use your own money, what you're doing is giving up the growth, the interest that money could have earned potentially in some investment, or just take the policy, for example, the 3 to 4% guaranteed growth plus dividends compounding that money could have earned inside the policy.
Yep.
So
Those two things I think are the best. The one that you're saying of, well, in the here and now, this living benefit is we can account for the cost of capital by putting money first into a policy. The compound growth, the dividends on top of it, that's a living benefit, right? That we have right now. Instead of spending cash, use the policy because it grows, it compounds, it can give us a dividend, et cetera. But I also think that first answer that you gave of, well, what $5,000 wad of cash also has a death benefit? It doesn't. What $5,000 credit card limit also comes with a death benefit? I mean, worst case
tax free.
scenario, tax free. Right, right. So there are benefits on top of benefits, and you're pointing them out, and I love that. So yeah, we have the living benefits now of this is a preferential way because it accounts for the cost of capital. Because I mean, whether it's $50,000 or $5,000, you're right. We got to think about what that could have produced over the rest of our whole lifetime. And then, of course, at the end of the day, if it culminates in a tax-free transfer of wealth to the next generation, well, you and I know are at least going to be on board, and we like sharing the message with people that are looking to, do what Proverbs says: be a good man, leave an inheritance for the next generations. Your children's children. Well, the death benefit does that, tax-free, like you say. All right, I love it. Okay, so you've got a first policy. Let's go to your timeline. You got a first policy. You're a married man. First baby's here. Carry us on.
Yeah, so that was in 2021.
Okay.
Actually,
Was baby born in 2021 then?
no, 2020. So actually, we
Okay.
would have had two little girls at that point already.
Okay.
Yeah, and
Awesome.
so life was full, life was busy. Well, shoot, it still is.
Yeah, of course.
Um, so from April through November, whatever that is, about 7 months after the first policy, I started the process to actually get a second policy.
Okay.
Now, by that time, I would have paid off this loan to my dad,
Mm-hmm.
had no payments on anything, just drove cheap vehicles, basically Dave Ramsey style. Cheap vehicles you can pay cash for. Now, at that point, I believe we were expecting our third. Yes. And we've got three little girls now. I actually got a picture pulled up. Oh, the screen
Awesome.
sharing is disabled. No worries. So
How old's your oldest?
she's 4.
Okay, I was thinking close, just based off of social media. This is our first time. We've had one phone call
Mhm.
other than this conversation. So that's so neat to me that number one, that you say yes when I ask you to have a conversation with me because you seem like such an interesting guy, and then lo and behold, I get you on here and you are such an interesting guy. You like guns, you like Bibles, you like family, you like policies. I love it. There's a lot that we could talk about right here. But that's neat too. And I guess I just want to take a moment and say that I appreciate you being able to have a conversation with me. Um, but our little girl's 4-year-old too. She's our youngest.
Yeah.
But we've got three as well. And yeah, those 4-year-olds are something else.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And so now, I mean, in this house, we've got a 4-year-old, a 3-year-old, and a 1-year-old about to turn 2. And yeah, it's a busy life. Things can get crazy. And shoot, call us crazy if you want, but it's intentional. This is actually something we talked about before we got married. She's like, well, she's the one asking the hard questions typically. She's kind of had a little bit of training around that, and
Okay.
I was
That's
fairly new.
good.
So she's asking, how many kids do you want?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, oh, I didn't really think about that. I don't know. And she starts to tell me what her dream is, that she wants lots of kids, no set number, just lots of kids. Kids are a blessing, and so the more the merrier, really. It
That's right.
kind of was her thought. Um, it can go wrong. That it's very important for parents to be learning, be patient, so many things in being a good parent. Um, Everything is kind of geared against being a good parent nowadays in today's society. So
You've got to be
it
intentional. Yes.
yep,
So I mean, that's why
exactly.
I like hearing about her asking the good, sincere, hard questions right out of the gate. I love that. And
Yeah,
I'll
yeah.
tell you, I'm one of 11 growing up. Okay. We had 11
Mhm.
kids in my household. And I would certainly say the more the merrier. So, okay, I'm with your wife on that one.
Yeah, yeah. I was actually the oldest of 11 myself.
Okay.
But it was bad. It was a nightmare. So I've seen the bad side of things, and but hey, it's human nature. Um, yeah, consequences of sin, I guess, is really how I can summarize it. She was the oldest of 13, I think, something like that.
Okay.
My wife, and so and we've got very different. experiences as far as having a big family.
Right.
Uh,
Interesting.
just,
Yeah.
just
And
yes,
I'm sure mine would be a little bit different too. I would just say in general, like you're saying, if you're intentional about it, and you're communicating right out of the gate, and we're getting into maybe a separate subject, but it's not really, infinite banking comes down to, for us, I know it's a privatized banking system for the family. So it leads us to talking about family,
yeah,
which I'm okay with. I love it. Being intentional and having conversations, I guess, are the two big takeaways that I'm getting, from where we're at now in this conversation. I love that. I would encourage people to ask those questions earlier on as well, just like your wife was. Well, how many kids are you thinking about having? And just beginning that conversation and then being intentional about it for sure. I love it. I love it.
yeah. So where I was getting at is call us crazy if you will, but we're actually expecting our fourth later this
Oh,
year.
okay.
And,
Did I already
and
know that? I don't think that I already knew that.
I
I don't know.
I don't know. We haven't
Fantastic.
really
Congratulations.
publicized it.
Okay,
Yeah,
right.
thanks
So
so
I
much.
probably didn't. I'm like, well, was I supposed to? No, I don't think I did.
Mhm.
Congratulations.
So like I said, we've got three little girls. I'm hoping for a boy, or we are hoping for a boy, but we'll take whatever it is.
Sure.
Yeah. So we were kind of in the timeline there in 2021. All right. So 7 months after my first policy, I had paid off this loan to my dad. We had two kids at the time, and I think we were already expecting our third. So busy life. Uh, my job had gotten even better. I was working super, super hard. Actually, that's one of the reasons I left the whole meat industry. I was working as a slaughter floor manager. So we killed beef, pork, and sheep and goats like 5 days a week, which is what I grew up in. So
Okay.
at that point, I already had over 20 years of experience under my belt as a 24, 25-year old. And so I was kind
You
of at
knew
the
that
top of my
business already.
industry already.
Okay.
And I was taking home this management pay that was really at the top of my industry as well. So that's a bit of a different conversation, but I actually got to a point where I was maxed out. There's no other room for growth really. And so I left the industry. But so 7 months after this first policy, I'm starting the process on a second policy, this time on my wife, and also looking at that death benefit legacy thing. If my wife were to pass away, I've got two or three kids to take care of.
Yeah.
I can't go to work and work a job anymore. There needs to be, okay, so let's say it's the death benefit that pays out. Now there's this pool of money that we can live on at least for quite a few years, taking care of, for me to take care of the little girls.
Or it should be that way. And I think that's a relevant, I know it is a relevant part for me when I'm having a discussion with folks is, do we want high cash value policies? Yes. And I feel like some people will skirt right over this, but that death benefit is important for so many reasons. And it's important in correlation to the cash value. I mean, whatever the cash value of a policy is, and whatever that death benefit is, the cash value must eventually equal whatever that death benefit amount is. So who wants a small death benefit? Not me, not you. We want to have, in the worst case scenario, something happens to somebody in the family, want to have money to give us time to be able to deal with things, right? And then in the better case scenario, and the more likely, the more probable scenario, we want a big number on that death benefit, as long as it's structured the right way, so that the cash value does what we want it to do. I'm just saying it's an important number. And yes, it's good that people think about those things. Well, what happens? Well, here I'll be with three girls, in your situation. So awesome. I wanted to elaborate on that while I was thinking about it. All right, so keep going. You're looking at the second policy. You want enough of a death benefit. You're doing the prudent thing. Seems like to me, of course, to get the second adult in the house with some coverage, but it's a chance for you to be able to grow and scale your private banking system at the same time. So, okay, keep going through that process for us.
Yeah. So I did 1,700 a month on that one. So now I've got 2,700 a month of cash going into these policies. And I really just let them build up over time. See, that would have been early 2022 now. I believe it was about a year after I started that second policy that I was able to close on a property that was kind of the rest of the entire corner lot we already lived on. And
Nice.
so that I didn't have enough available to use all of my own money out of the policy. I did take another private loan, and I got into some other ways of financing, and would have been all great. Um, but here I am another year and a half later, I think it is, and the property is not done yet. So I'm not able to refinance it into something long term to be able to rent it out at the same time and make that spread and cash flow in between it. So I'm in a bit of a tough place currently, actually. Um, but really only because I didn't or I wasn't able to use all of my own pool of cash like out of the policy. Um, but we're working on some things. I will pull through. There's always solutions, I think.
Yep. And the more I think that creativity comes into, any problem, the better off we are, right? Like that goes back to Nash's approach to infinite banking in the first place. Is he says, well, it's an exercise to consider this whole concept. It's an exercise in imagination, reason, logic, and prophecy. And he says imagination is the most important one. How can we think about this problem creatively, come up with a creative solution, which infinite banking in and of itself is out of the box thinking. The normal is not to be your own banker. The normal is not to completely control the banking function in your life, whether it's real estate investing, whether it's running your household, whether it's a traditional business. You're out there, self-employed. I was talking with some folks, Indiana last night, self-employed, seeing the applications to business. Well, business is financed. Who do you want controlling the finance of your business, right? You want to be able to do that for yourself, or you want somebody else doing that? So yeah, creativity, imagination, that's straight from the Becoming Your Own Banker book. So important on all these things. I'll tell you one thing that I noticed from what you said about that second policy, and I think that it seems to be the tendency, not across the board, but it seems to me, and that was our experience too, that when we got our second policy, so I did the same thing, Linus. I got the first policy on me. We used that to pay off debt for several months, but it was, 6 months, 8 months in to using that first policy, we decided same thing. We've got a young family. We want coverage on my wife, but also we're doing this thing now. We understand it more because, again, Nash says more's caught than taught. We were actually using that first policy to pay off student loans and credit cards and whatnot, that we decided to dedicate more of our cash flow towards this private banking system as well. And we got a policy on my wife, and here's what I'm getting to. The second policy was even bigger than the first policy as far as premium amount, because we got it, or at least we got it more. I'm not, we've not arrived. I still don't know everything about infinite banking because it's infinite banking. It can always go to another level, right? But we understood more 6-8 months into using that first policy and decided, yeah, let's take it up another level. So that seems to be what you did as well. So cool.
The money multiplier actually had a little bit of an extra challenge to be able to get my wife approved, because obviously higher premium, higher death benefit. And so they were asking, like, why does she need more death benefit than you? You're the earning spouse. She's a non-working homemaker.
Yep.
Why?
Yep.
I don't know what Hannah Kessler sweet talked them into over there at Lafayette Life.
I can tell you
We
what I
got
would. I can
her.
tell you what I would say. Listen, this guy, if he's stuck with 3 girls by himself, do you know what a quality homemaker would cost to replace that? I mean, it's an underappreciated role, is what I'm actually is what I'm actually saying. When I think about, and I'm sure I can't even think of everything that my wife does. There's no way that I could pin a number to that. But if I were going to try, it's going to be a big number. So yeah, and that's an important role. Actually, that's an important role that an agent has, or an advisor has, in conveying to the insurance company, what someone's needs are. And we got to play by the rules, right? It's a highly regulated product from the get-go, and you do have to have those conversations with the insurance company to say, well, they need this amount of coverage, this style of policy, etc., because of X, Y, and Z, and be able to communicate that effectively to the insurance company, right? To custom build a policy for someone. So yeah, very appropriate. Very appropriate. And shout out to all the folks that are, the homemakers and raising families. I know my wife's super important. I couldn't do what I do without her, for sure. So, okay. All right. So you had that conversation to be able to get that second policy. You felt what it was like to have an agent in your corner conveying that to the insurance company for you. You got that policy. So are we up to date then? Up to date is family with 3 kids, 4th on the way. 2 policies in the family so far. Yeah.
Yeah.
You're looking and doing things in the real estate world. Anything else catching us up to speed today?
So I'm actually a part of the Money Multiplier now, the
Right.
team, the application team there. So I actually work with the insurance companies full time in processing applications, convincing the underwriter, all these kinds of things. And that started a year and a half ago. So very soon after I got that property that I mentioned, like with the second policy. So end of 2022 is when I joined the Money Multiplier team. And so I've been there since. I actually just got my life insurance license early this year.
Okay.
And so I'm kind of increasing some of the things I'm doing. I want to become a money mentor on their team.
Awesome.
You guys there at the Cash Compound, you have Cash Compound coaches, right? CCC versus what is it? MMM.
MMM. That's right. Okay. Well, walk me through that if you would, Linus. Because I obviously ended up doing the same thing. I just practiced the concept as a guy from North Carolina, paying off debt, financing family vacations, some real estate deals myself, whatever, for 4 or 5 years. And then I made the transition to do something professionally. So what did that look like for you? I mean, what were you thinking? What inspired you to make the transition from just using this process, adopting this lifestyle to do the things that you wanted into, I'd love to be a mentor to folks in this?
So from day one, once I read the book, all the years ago already, maybe 4 years ago at this point, pretty much. From day one, once I kind of wrapped my head around some of the possibilities, hence infinite banking concept, is I got very passionate about it. Even with the limited knowledge I had, I was telling friends and family. Typically, it got shot down. One reason I didn't explain it very well, or I got into a corner because I didn't know any answer to a question. All these kinds of things. But no, I had a passion for it from day one, and so I didn't really realize I would have an opportunity to help people get started professionally until I saw, an advertisement from the Money Multiplier to their clients, like, "Hey, we're looking for somebody to join the team to help people." And so I took a quick look at the amount of money a person can earn as an application specialist, and I'm like, well, that would be a reduction in income, but I can handle that right now. And so I walked away from a $50 an hour type of job and to start this and help people. And I look back and still realize I was crazy for doing it, but I wouldn't go back.
I understand both aspects of that. I felt super passionate as well, and I was inviting folks to be able to see a video, to come to a presentation, to read the book from the start myself once we decided to do this. So I know what you're saying there. And this is how I know you, right? This is how I first got to meet you, was through business channels where I see, okay, well, there's this guy, Linus, who's helping people with their policies and things like that. And I didn't know that you had gotten your license this year. So congratulations on that. And I also love the Money Multiplier for that, because it just happens that sometimes we do end up talking with folks who are interested and they are passionate about sharing this idea. So I love that the Money Multiplier did reach out to current clients, because number one, that means that when somebody is handling someone else's application, well, they actually practice what they preach. They have their own policies already. They're already paying significant premiums, whatever that looks like for them, two policies that they own and they're using them. So who better to help somebody else, convey information to the insurance company for this person that's applying for a policy and so on. So it all makes sense to me, but I think it's interesting for everybody else to be able to listen. So I guess what I'd like to, pause. I'll say pause because for myself, I'd love to have more conversations with you in general. This is only the second time we're talking live, real time. The other time was just on a regular phone call. Of course, we see each other through emails and team meetings and things like that. But I'd love to know what, somebody could take home with them, knowing what you know now, having the experience that you have now, being a consumer, being a professional, helping folks implement this concept. What takeaways would you like them to have and take home with them?
Now I'm within the system, so take it for what you want. But I
Sure.
can assure you, it's not a scam. I've learned that. But you don't have to know it all or understand all the nuances and the advanced strategies to be able to start. You can start at a small level, whatever is comfortable. Maybe at first, if you're not entirely sure how this is going to work for you. So that's one thing that stands out to me. I look back and I realize, or I remember how little I knew or how little I understood when I started that first policy. I even kind of violated some basic rules of the infinite banking concept in the first policy, or even in picking my premiums. I was kind of shooting in the dark a little bit. I kind of knew what I could handle, but I was also shooting in the dark. I didn't go to actual numbers off of my bank account and do all the math or figure out where I'm at. So
Listen, I've probably made every mistake that you can be, or if I haven't yet, I'll probably make those too, right? And I've been on a 9-year plus long journey now. So give yourself some grace there. There's something about learning, right? I tell people when you know enough to know that you want to do this, start.
mhm.
Because just that first thing that you said that was an aha moment for you of seeing that Facebook ad that said, well, you could do more than one thing with your dollars. If I only knew that, that sounds like a good path to begin. Like if that's true, right? If I can discover enough for myself by reading Becoming Your Own Banker or watching somebody's presentation or having a conversation where they answer my questions or all of the above, if I can know enough to know that that is true, that sounds like a good path to just begin. And then we figure out the details as we go, because again, it's the infinite banking concept. So give yourself some grace, sir. I probably picked a pretty random number for myself in the beginning. That was a stretch as well. But I was excited. I did want to get the thing going real quick. And then, I learned more by actually beginning too, though. Right? It's more's caught than taught. I tell people it's like riding a bike. You could watch people all the day long and see them pop their little wheelies, ride around the neighborhood, little boys, girls having a good time. But there's something else for you to get on the bike yourself, you know?
Yeah, there you
Anyway,
go.
hopefully that didn't sound too preachy, but man, I appreciate you being on here. I appreciate us being able to have this conversation. I'd love it if we could have another, I could talk about any of these things and have a good time with you, Bibles and guns and policies and growing families and real estate or just whatever else. So I'd love to have another conversation when it makes sense for us to be able to jump back in each other's calendars. But I do want to say a big thank you. Man, I'm excited for everything you got going on. To have you in the business, I know how efficient you are in the business and knowledgeable when you jump in on team calls. And I'm happy to hear about the family growing. So I wish you the best in everything, brother.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, that was an absolute pleasure for me to have that conversation with Linus. I look forward to more conversations. If you would like to know more about what it could look like for you to implement the infinite banking concept into your household or your business or your investing, then don't hesitate to check out my introductory presentation on our website and then book a consultation call where we could talk through your questions your takeaways. That's DurhamTalents.com. We'll talk soon. Have a great day. Take care.